Afternoon. My name is Dan Wesley, and my topic this afternoon is security. As importantly, is how to build a software company or how to be thoughtful into securing your application in the software offering that you have by design. I'm the CTO of Stratum. We're a B2B startup here in Paris. Our goal is to secure highly regulated transactions in a way that uses blockchain and Bitcoin blockchain to keep things safe and to manage processes that are irrefutable. We're growing fast and hope to continue that trajectory over the years. And from a mission perspective and from what we hope to accomplish, the very foundation, the very DNA of our software needs to be secure by the type of transactions that we manage and the responsibilities that we have protecting customer data. So the topic today is really to talk about security. And I thought it's always a good way to start to look at some of the facts and figures as to what's going on in the market and more importantly, what's going on in the hacker market, and seeing that phishing is still the top threat to software. Those solicitous emails, those opportunities to help the Nigerian prince are great entrees for hackers and for threat actors and mission states to enter your application and enter your environment, whether you like it or not. Secondly, stolen credentials. In our lives today, we are always under threat, just from economic perspective, from a need to know information perspective, and from an industry perspective. So as we are all very, very aware of, we need to be safe. In addition to that, again, people are intending to get into our software, into our personal information, into our highly secured information. Whether you're a B2B software company, whether you're a big corporation, whether you're just shopping at the local store, people want your information, they want to exploit your information, and they're finding better and more devious ways in which to do that. And if you look at the graphics that I share with you, again, the hackers are always trying to get in. Errors are there, but less so. People are forcibly trying to enter your systems, threat actors, external actors, criminal groups, again, trying to get into the software that you're either trying to create or the relationship that your software and your business has with other businesses. And as we can see as well, and this information is coming from the 2020 Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report. I would say the most important thing is financial motivation. Agents, hackers, industries, militarized states, industrial espionage. People want to find out what we're doing and how we're doing it. And as we develop and as we build software, we need to provide a foundation of assurity to the companies and the customers that we're trying to sell to that our data is safe. Again, the threats are all around us. If you look at specific industries, as you would expect, healthcare, information management, financial services are the most hacked or the most attempted to be hacked and breached industries in the world. So as you are software companies, as we, as a software company, look at who are we trying to offer our software to, who we're trying to sell to, what markets we're attempting to enter or maintain, we have to understand that the threats are there. We have to understand that there are security issues and security mandates that need to be in place as we build software, and more importantly, as we continue to extend our software to different industries and different solutions. So the topic today is security by design. I wanted to start the discussion with just an update that yes, we're still under threats, and every industry that we may be or we may be offering our services to is also under threats. So where do we start? We start by experience. I've been in the industry, I've been in the ERP space for over 30 years. I've been security risk officer and senior architect with an Andreessen Horowitz startup in Silicon Valley, a company by the name of Tidemark. I represented the trust office and the tech office as chief technology and trust officer at Workday. Was at SAP for a number of years, 9 years, I believe, in total. PeopleSoft for 12, Oracle for 4. I've been all over our space from a software perspective. What I've learned is that security has to be a mandate. It has to be a foundation to how we build, how we extend, and how we look at our software. No software is too small. No application is too marginalized or myopic in scope. The experience that we all have on this shared event today is that people are trying to get in. So where do we start as software companies? Where do we start to establish a framework of building an application and a security stack that's secure by design? I think most importantly, you've got to align with the framework. Common framework that we all see and is mandated by many of the customers that we are offering our software to is ISO. ISO has been a foundation of policy, procedure, and test and rigor for a number of years. There's been some changes to the ISO standards. I think as a software company, we follow the ISMS policy and procedures and build a framework of foundations around ISO 27001. There's new standards that are emerging for cloud-based and SaaS-based vendors. 27017, 2015 is a standard that lifts some of the nuances of ISO to the cloud itself. There's COBIT, there's NIST from a US-based company, CSA, Cloud Security Alliance. It's important as a software company, though nobody likes to do it. You've got to start with policy. You have to start with procedure. You have to measure yourself and be represented and audited against industry standards. Your customers expect it, especially as you grow. I'll tell the story of startup that I was in back in California, and the CEO just wanted to build feature upon feature upon feature. We were a heads down development team of about 40 people. We had this beautiful EPM product that managed in-memory dimensional transactions. We were looking at budgeting systems and consolidated systems, and we were just pushing as much feature and functionality in the product as you can imagine until we went to our first customer, which was a financial services customer. And our financial services customer told us in no short order that great software, but have you tested it? Show me your ISMS policy. Their risk department identified the data that we were going to hold on their behalf in our SaaS-based solution, that it needed to be not only fast and efficient and all the things that you expect from an application perspective, it needed to be rigored, it needed to be tested, and it needed to be formally audited to ensure that we were following best practices. And with that, the ride was on. It was a 2-year all hands on deck to build policy, to retrofit policies into our development cycle, to build policies from the beginning to the end, to measure those policies, and more importantly, allow ourselves to be audited in a way that a bank, financial institution, big pharma, anyone who's managing regulated data was assured by our certifications to the framework of choice that we were applying good practice to the way that we build software and we execute as an organization. So my first advice to those who are out there and building your startup or second stage, third stage, find a framework that fits your application and fits your offering, stick to it. And though it's not pretty, and though it certainly isn't easy to do, follow the rigors and the policy procedures that have to follow that as well. It allows you to open into new marketplaces. It allows you to be audited against that standard, and more importantly, rest assurances to the customers that you're selling to that you're practicing good industry standards to build your software, and pick a swim lane, as they say. So again, from the beginning, it's important. And for us, it's a retrofit. We've had to go back to the way that we build software and implement ISO policies and procedures. And it is a lot of work, but the companies that we deal with, financial services companies in France, require it and are assured that we're following the process, meaning we're building security and trust into the platform as we develop. Second step is to understand the type of data that you're protecting. GDPR is a living, breathing entity that has very strict responsibilities as to the safe handling of protected and private information. Understand the type of data that you're going to be ingesting, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 in your development cycle. Understand your responsibilities as the data processor. Most software companies fall within the responsibility of data processor. You protect the data on behalf of your customers. You manage updates, patches, security bulletins. You manage heartbeats. You manage availability. You manage the application in a way that keeps the data that you were entrusted to manage safe and secure. With that as well, you also set the contractual responsibilities as to who does what, which data is given to you, how APIs are managed, integrations are concerned, or integrations are passed off to the application as well. It's important to know your responsibilities as a small development shop, as a boutique development shop, or as an industrial enterprise development shop, the type of data that you ingest, and as importantly, the responsibilities that come with the data that you're ingesting, most specifically GDPR and other organic privacy laws that are coming as well. So don't forget as to what you're protecting and who you're protecting it for, and then your contractual responsibilities as the data processor. There may be some applications that also manage the data controllership as well. So again, don't think of it later, think of it early. When you're building an application that is secure by design, you understand the data flow into your system and into your application and into your cloud or your on-prem or however you architect it. Understand with that ingestion of data, you have responsibilities that are incumbent upon you to manage. Think about it early and think about the type of data that you're protecting. If possible, try to keep your customers' data independent of one another. We talk about security by design. If you overlay, if you don't think of the responsibility that you have to segregate customer data, again, for data privacy concerns, but as you architect and build your application, it gets more and more difficult. We had a layer of the software that we had built that commingled customer data. And it took us about 8 months to pull that data out and store it in a way that met GDPR requirements or the early GDPR requirements. More importantly, data isolation, risk management, risk tolerance levels for most of our customers. So as you're starting, think of multi-tenant SaaS. Think of every customer is an island in the way that their data is stored, it's written, updated, and backed up in the same way. It's important, again, as you're building your software company, as you're building your solutions, to ensure that you can accommodate data isolation, customer isolation, where at all possible. Again, think about these things up front. It allows you to sell to secure markets, and more importantly, give your customers assurances that there isn't data bleed or there isn't any opportunity for one customer to see another customer's data. Again, now we start to look at the onion itself. So we talk about security design, we talk about a framework, we talk about an understanding of data responsibilities, we talk about data segregation and building a platform where customers' data can be isolated. Then we talk about building a layered defense, or starting to build a depth of defense model around your security doctrine, around how you build applications, and more importantly, how you layer security in a way that allows you to secure by architecture, secure by platform, secure by infrastructure. So as you look at the core of the onion here, it's really customer data. As we talked about before, it could be segregated. Hopefully it's segregated. Could be commingled if it had to be. You think about layering that data. Customer data, they own that. They're the data controller. They own that data. They want to see it safe. They want to see it behind a data encryption layer, if possible, a key management service or some sort of encryption mechanism to ensure that the data is protected when it rests. You start to build the layer out. We use a blockchain cryptology to ensure that our signatures are managed in a Bitcoin ledger for managing some of our transactions in a way that lenses the data outside of the data itself, or more toward the event of the data. You start to build yourself out. Now, to our partners, when I talk about yours, if you're in a cloud-based service, Amazon, Azure, or others, you're starting then to layer in their security mechanisms, key management services, certificate management. In each cloud provider, again, as we expand the onion, you start to protect through IDS, intrusion detections that may be offered by your cloud provider, or mechanisms that you have in place, authentication, step-up authentication, multi-factor authentication, RBAC, ABAC controls. So as you start to think of security by design, and you think about your application and your development offering, think of it as this layered onion. Think of where the handoff, what you need to build from a software perspective at the core of the onion itself. And maybe it's a bad analogy. I'm sure the group you can tell me whether there needs to be a better metaphor. But understand when you are hosting or cloud hosting this software, or you're using a cloud hosting provider, where the lines of responsibilities trade off between the edge, authentication, intrusion, malware protection, all of the steps as it moves down to the data core itself. So understand your security responsibilities as it gets closer to the center of the onion, and then the trade-offs to providers that you may be sharing, or cloud services providers that you may be paying for, or it's part of your development team. So just to understand the layering and what is important from a security perspective. And again, better to do it sooner than later. And as we start to peel the onion back, for those of you who build software that goes on premise, or for those of you who maintain your own hosted co-location facilities or manage your own services, again, always a layered defense model. When you build your platform, when you build your production environments, trust no one. These days, as we saw the numbers before, there are people with intent to harm, and with intent to intrude, and with intent to siphon and steal your intellectual capital. Trust no one. Ensure that you are managing credentials from the edge all the way in, as well as just being able to protect your edge networks from denial of services, men in the middle, managing the hardware as you have in between. We have been in environments where we've allowed the cloud provider to manage the edge services, and then I've been in environments, large-scale environments, where we've built the edge routers, the load balancers, the edge firewalls, etc. Think of that onion that we're protecting. Think of the data that we're protecting. Build your infrastructure with the best available tools that you can afford to ensure that you're protecting the data in a way that there is zero trust, but there's also audited proof that the data is safe and that the edge is protected in the way that it is. I think the most important aspect of security by design, we understand our customers, we understand our data responsibilities, we understand the framework commitment of policies, procedures, and testing of those policies and procedures. We understand what we may purchase from our cloud providers or the infrastructure that we have to build, the layered defense model, the depth of defense model, the zero trust model. I think the most important aspect of security design comes through change management. And in my experiences, this is the area that gets tested much more so than you would think. So you would expect a company to test your security profile either through audit reports or through a third-party pen test or bug bounty programs, et cetera. The hardware that's in place or the authentication that's in place. But one of the areas that is difficult to manage, and more importantly, requires discipline and rigor, is moving security into the change management process. Every step of your software, from source code management to the testing of and QE aspects of your software development build cycle to each release, needs to be documented, needs to be audited, needs to have code scanners where it makes best sense, and has to be a rigored process and segregated process. It's when you tell a company like BNP, well, our software is secure, but your developers are in their production code doing hot fixes at night. It's not secure at all. The red flags go up and the audits begin. The change management process is often overlooked, and I overlooked it myself. And when we built ISO programs and NIST programs in previous lives, change management needs to be in place and needs to be rigorous to how you build and how you develop and how you build a security by design application. Everyone looking over each other's shoulders, everybody ensuring that at each stage of the testing process, there are either code scanners, if possible, if affordable. There are at least authentication or approval mechanisms to promote software from step to step. And again, it's not pretty. It's certainly not anything that anyone, it's not any of the glamour books, but you've got to manage a rigorous change management process to build an application that is secure by design. And with that said, no step unturned. So at each step of the software development lifecycle, each step under the umbrella of change management, try to integrate security testing in as many places as possible. It's easier to catch a 0-day, or it's easier to catch a bug or security fix when you're still in software development rather than in production. But if you can, and the real DNA foundation of security by design is part as you manage through the way that you manage and manage your releases, that you have rigored checkpoints and rigored stop steps to ensure that you're security testing where it makes sense, you're doing QE testing where it makes sense, you have approvals as each step is released and as each step is moved forward. It is most important, and as important for you customers who are managing private information and managing highly regulated information like PII information or financial information, CII information. You need to ensure that your chief privacy officer or your DPO, your data privacy officer, or your chief security officer is approving your release cycles and evaluating those for risk and for threat. And as importantly, I cannot tell you the value of having third-party pen tests and app pen tests as part of your software development lifecycle, if possible. It allows you to fix those holes, fix those gaps, fix those security questions upfront before you deploy. And these are some of the testing companies that are in the marketplace today. We at Stratum use Vera, and it gives us tremendous insight, and also gives us a proof point to our customers that we pen test our software, we remediate any known violations or any known threats from a critical, high, medium, or low perspective. It shows the perseverance of our software to correct security risks. It also forces us the cadence to ensure that we patch in a certain way, that we maintain currency from a threat understanding and a security bulletin monitoring program, ensuring that we're looking at threats, and most importantly to our customers, showing that we take software security seriously. And again, test, and test again, or participate in bug bounty programs, which can be expensive, but it allows a third-party financial incentive to be poking around your software and keeping you forewarned as to where there may be threats, or there may be leakage, or there may be holes in the software and the security model that you have in place. So I would say test, test, test again. The more certifications that you have, the more audited tests that you can provide your customer, the greater assurance that your customers have that you do adhere to a security by design profile and methodology as to how you build software. And just like in our academic careers, it's always good to get tested to see what you know, but more importantly, what you don't know. So with that, I would say, to summarize the conversation that we've had so far, is, the threats are out there. They're ever changing. As you look to build security by design into your application, understand that the threats are going to always be faster than you will be. It's important to stick to the rigors of a framework, be it ISO, be it COBIT, be it CSA. Follow a framework. Follow the path of those who've gone before. Follow the advisement of policy procedure. Follow the importance of auditing against that framework as well. Understand your data responsibility, the data that you are entrusted to manage on your customer's behalf. Understand your responsibility if it falls under GDPR controls, whether GDPR or not. Understand who the data controller is. Understand our responsibility as the data processor, the person who manages that data. Understand how customers need to see that you take their data seriously and you protect your data seriously, and segregate it if at all possible. Us and them, again, layer your defense model, leverage the tools of the cloud providers that are out there, build your own, but understand it is a layered technique, and understand that at the kernel of that onion, so to speak, is the customer data that you protect. Build the policies and procedures, build the change management, build the testing scenarios to ensure that not only can you say that you're doing it, but you have proof points that you are doing it. Change management and software development lifecycle are critical to building an application that is secure by design. You've got to have someone looking over your shoulder to approve promotions, ensure that promotions are tested, ensure that as you're developing the software, it's tested, and if possible, pen tested all along the way. Easier to fix a security hole earlier in the development cycle than later. Test, test, test. And with that, really from my standpoint, I came into security later in my career, certainly have been an architecture champion and worked in many different architectures. What I have found is you can fix an architecture pretty straightforwardly. Security risks and policy procedures and bad habits of managing how you build and manage your software are harder to undo. And in some cases, in a previous life of mine, was a barrier to some industries because of the recklessness that we had. And we corrected it, but it took time. And it took time away from building the software to correct the security things that we didn't think about. We weren't secure by design. By the time we finished, we were secure by design. And with that, I will hopefully didn't put anyone to sleep this afternoon, and hopefully I thank you for your patience with my English. I tried to not speak too quickly, and I will be available for questions, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dan. Very interesting talk. Hopefully the founders and the CTO in the audience learn a lot about the best practices to put in place. So we have a first question.
Sure.
I'll let you.
I see that from
Jonas.
So Jonas, that's a very philosophically important question. It is my experience that your biggest threats are disgruntled employees. That has been my experience, that it isn't, if you build a proper infrastructure, you build a proper testing mechanism, and also the revenue and the responsibilities that the Amazons, the Azures, the Google Enterprise, and other Orange have in place are often state-of-the-art technologies. I would say that a customer is less reluctant to place data in your cloud as a SaaS vendor when they know that it's been tested and they know that there are audit programs in place and there are app pen tests with positive results, and they can see the evidence of your build by design. I will say that in my experience that for some industries, it's a difficult concept, and we face that all the time as well. The proof point, though, is when you can say, I am ISO 27017 2015 certified by this auditor, and I provide a statement of applicability, and I can provide to you 3 or 4 app pen tests, and I can show you the policies and procedures. I've gone through a SOC 1 or a SOC 2 audit where an auditor comes and looks over your shoulders and looks at root super users and sees who can or who can't do things. Some industries do not allow data to offload into the cloud, and we're working on moving them forward. I think COVID showed some of the inadequacies of some of the on-prem protections and backup recoveries as well. But it's a difficult question. But it is one that we fight every day, and I think also let your cloud providers also help you in that argument as well. Talk about the state-of-the-art facilities that they do have at the edge, the way that data is protected. But at the end of the day, those industries will require proof. They're risk adverse. They'll require proof. Having that ISO framework or the CSA documentation and COVID, and prove to them that you're safe. Prove to them that you manage a strong, secure by design software development lifecycle, change management, be audited, show pen tests. And it's getting too expensive to be on-prem these days, and it's getting harder and harder to find talent as well.
Yeah, and maybe talking about budget, like some best practices on, like, do you have a budget dedicated to security? If yes, like, how do you make the calculation of how much should you spend on security? Because this is only like, how much could you lose if you don't spend on security? That's not the other way around. So do you have some best practices on that?
I would say from a budgeting standpoint, as much as you can afford. I hate to say it in that way, but at minimum, get tested. make sure that you have enough budget to do at least semi-annual pen tests. It's critically important because that's telling you what a hacker sees, how to get into your software. So at minimum, budget for pen tests. The ISO framework is expensive because there's a lot of policies and procedures that have to be in place, and finding the talent to manage that. So that's a personnel issue. Every software company needs a security professional, at least one or two. You need a data protection assigned officer. Now that could also be that security person as well. If you're building, and it's so expensive to defend these days, if you're building an on-premise solution or you're building something that you're locally hosting, take advantage of, for us, our budget is, and let me backtrack and say our budget is for security testing twice a year. It is for security professionals, ops and DevOps team that will have security assignments with it. That's where we're at in the process right now, leveraging our cloud providers for the edge protection and paying for some of the features that they have on the edge as well. But it's a tough question, because if you're paying security, you're not necessarily paying development or developing new features or finding that UI developer, UX developer. I think it's a great investment though, because as you look at more regulated or you can never be safe enough, and more importantly, your customers will be assured that you're safe enough. So from a budget perspective, as much as you can, at least twice a year testing, at least two, I would strongly advocate for 2 security professionals within your development team who are security professionals. And then if you can get more than that, use that to bring in help to build your ISMS policies and procedures as well. But you can never have enough money in security, as a friend of mine once said. So
perfect, thanks. And maybe one last question about like some VP engineering and CTOs in the audience may be well aware of how important it is to think about security and to act upon it. But maybe how should they talk about it with the founder, with the CEO, like how to educate non-tech people about security, because this is a matter of whole within the companies. So maybe do you have some feedback on how to think about security for non-technical people?
I think it's, in our day-to-day lives today, security is important. You look at the vishing, the mishing, the phishing that's going on. You look at the breaches that have occurred, the PII theft that's occurred. I think it's easier to talk about security today because it's in our day-to-day lives, and we're security aware by all of the newspaper helps us. So I think that's where it starts. I think from a management perspective, sometimes it's important to have a third party come and do a risk audit, to look at your system, to look at your application, to look at your software, to look at the data responsibilities that you have. And with that, give you an honest outsider's view as to how safe and secure your application and your platform is. I think today it's easier though to answer the question directly because we are living in a very security conscious day and age, and the threats are all around us, and the threats are our credit cards, our debit cards, our ATM access, our home accounts, our Internet of Things. Someone hijacked my Sonos the other day. It's all around us today. So I think the conversation is easier to have. For us, in a previous life, it cost us 2 customers and 2 years of revenue from a very specific industry because we did not manage to a framework. We did not managed to a security standard. And I think in hindsight, you can look at industries themselves as the list that I showed you earlier. If you attempt to sell in those industries and they've been breached or they are in a secured environment, how easy or how difficult is it for you to do that when you're not audited? You have no security backbone, you have no security framework, you've never gone through an app pen test. And anyone who's managing PII information and has GDPR responsibilities, the answer is very simple. There is a revenue fine for you if you do not adhere to the standards of GDPR. Nobody, and that's a revenue, top line revenue fine. Nobody wants that. And what value is your security reputation? It's a software company. If you're known to be breached, or if you've been, if security isn't important to you and you have a security incident, what is your reputation worth? And I think it's an easier conversation today than it's ever been.
Perfect. We have one more question from Jonas.
Let's see, let me read this here, Jonas. So customers want their usage to be auditable on our platforms as well. Audit trails are incredibly important. We talk about change management. We talk about the ability to audit activity within your applications. So auditing role-based access controls, it is incredibly important as well. And that is something you burn and build into your application itself, whether it's through reporting, whether it's through logs, whether it's through specific repositories that manage access, change control, updates, views, selects, and things like that. You can always audit at the data level. You can always audit at the application level. Where it gets difficult is auditing at the view and the ability to filter and lens the data itself. It is incredibly important. And Jonas, to that question itself, they are incredibly important, audit trails, every step of the way. In a large enterprise and in ERP applications, you are logging IP addresses, you're logging locations so you can blacklist, whitelist IP addresses. So if I always log in through France and all of a sudden I'm coming in from Belarus, that's a flag. My username, my associated role within the organization, my role's access to data could be arithmetic, where I try to go to a certain area and I can't because of it's the value is greater than a certain level. Jonas, I would say auditing is critically important from an application development perspective. You need to think about it, you need to be able to express it, and more importantly, with auditing always comes a responsibility of reporting and dashboarding that comes with it as well. At minimum, role-based access, who login statistics, where do they come from, how long were they in, did they change a password, execution of that login. At minimum, you want to you need to audit in those two areas itself. So from an endpoint application perspective, hopefully that answered your question.
All right. I think we're going to be out of time. It's been a very interesting discussion, and thanks a lot, Dan, for sharing your best practices, your feedback, and your pieces of advice for the founders in the audience. So thanks a lot, Dan. Maybe a last word.
Again, just be vigilant. And if there's any questions that you have or you need to follow up on any of this, feel free to reach out to me as well. I'd be glad to help in any way that you may need. And we're all part of the community together. The stronger we are as applications, the better security profiles we have. And more importantly, I'm here to help those who need it. So thank you for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks a lot.
Bye for now.
So we're gonna have a break, and we will be back at 5:30 for a talk with Microsoft. So enjoy the networking and the expo.
Just walk your